What if you could see the future? What if you could know for sure if that amazing idea of yours was going to be a huge hit or a total flop before you spent a dime building it? Well, that's basically the superpower we're talking about today. It's called prototyping, the art of failing cheap so you can win big.
I mean, this is the big one, isn't it? That idea you have, the one that keeps you up at night, you're sure it's a game changer. But how do you really know? How can you be sure it solves a real problem for real people before you pour your heart, your soul, and your bank account into building the whole thing?
Well, the answer to that million-dollar question is actually surprisingly simple. And to get it, we just need to borrow an idea from a field that's been testing huge, expensive ideas for centuries. We need to start thinking like an architect.
So just imagine for a second, you are an architect. You've spent weeks drawing up this perfect, detailed blueprint. Everything's there on paper, it all looks great. But can you hand that piece of paper to your client and expect them to truly understand what it'll feel like to live in that house? Probably not, right?
So what does a smart architect do? They don't just start digging and pouring concrete. No way. They build a small model, out of cardboard or foam. It lets the client literally walk their fingers through the space, see how the rooms connect, and get a real feel for the place. It's an absolutely essential step.
And that little cardboard model, that is exactly what a prototype is in the digital world. It's a testable version of your idea. It lets people walk through your app or your website so you can spot the problems and find out what works, long before you pay a team of engineers to build it for real. So yeah, prototypes let us test our ideas. But the real magic, the whole philosophy behind this, isn't really about getting it right on the first try. It's about the incredible power of getting it wrong, as early and as cheaply as humanly possible. You've probably heard this phrase before, and it is so, so true. Think about it. Finding a huge problem when your idea is just a few sketches on paper, the cost to fix that is basically zero. But finding that same problem after you've launched and have thousands of users, oof, that's a 5 or 6-figure mistake easy. So a prototype really becomes this central point for learning. First, and most obviously, you get to test your ideas with actual users and get their feedback. That is pure gold. Second, it builds empathy. It gets your entire team on the same page because they can see and touch the idea, not just read about it. And that prevents so much confusion later on. And finally, and maybe most importantly, it lets you test your biggest assumptions before you bet the farm on them.
Okay, so not all prototypes are the same, not even close. They exist on this whole spectrum of realism and detail, and we call that fidelity. And knowing the difference and when to use each type is absolutely key. So let's break down the 3 main levels.
Fidelity? It's just a fancy word for how realistic your prototype is. Is it a rough sketch on a napkin, or is it something that looks and feels so real you could almost launch it tomorrow? That's the spectrum of fidelity. And this slide lays out the 2 extremes perfectly. Over on the left, you have lo-fi. It's all about the big picture, the basic flow. It's supposed to be rough and quick. Then, all the way on the right, you have hi-fi. This is where you focus on the little details, the exact colors, the smooth animations. It looks like the real deal.
So let's start with lo-fi. This is your best friend at the very beginning of a project. Seriously, we're talking about sketches on paper that you link together. It's the fastest, cheapest way to get an idea out of your head and into the world. You're not worried about how it looks at all. You're just asking one question. Does this basic idea even make sense?
Then you level up to mid-fi. Think of this as the bridge between that rough sketch and the final polished design. You're building it digitally now, focusing on layout and spacing. And you'll notice it's usually in grayscale. That's on purpose. It stops people from getting distracted by colors so you can answer the real question, is this layout easy to understand and use?
And finally, we get to the main event, high fidelity. This is as close as you can get to the final product without writing any code. It's got the real colors, the final branding, the slick animations, the whole shebang. You use this when you need to test the complete user experience, from start to finish.
But, and this is so important, I have to give you this warning, please do not skip the early stages and jump right into a beautiful, high-fidelity prototype. It is the most common mistake people make. If you show someone a perfect-looking design too early, they'll give you feedback on the color of a button instead of telling you that the whole idea is fundamentally broken. You have to make sure the foundation is solid before you start picking out paint colors. Okay, so we've got these 3 levels, lo-fi, mid-fi, and hi-fi. The real skill here, the thing that separates the pros, is knowing exactly which one to use and when. It's about using the right tool for the job.
And this table here breaks it down perfectly. You use lo-fi at the very beginning, when you're just asking, does this concept even make sense? Then, once you've figured that out, you move to mid-fi to ask, okay, is this layout usable? And only when you're sure about the structure and the flow do you move to hi-fi to ask the final question, is this beautiful and delightful to use? Each stage answers a more specific question.
And I want to leave you with this last thought because it's the most important thing to remember. A prototype is not a performance. You're not trying to show off a finished product. A prototype is a question. Its only purpose is to help you learn. It's a tool you use to ask better questions so that you can get the answers you need to build something people will actually love. So think about that next big idea of yours. What's the first, simplest question you need to ask?